Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from New York by Sienna Merope-Synge. She's a human rights lawyer at the Institute for Justice and Democracy in Haiti. And also in New York is Ives. He's the founder of the weekly newspaper Haiti, Liberte, and was a founding member of the International Support Haiti Network. I thank you both for joining us here on The Newsmaker. Sienna, let me start with you. Is it a very dangerous time in Haiti right now, as we've seen the protests and their aftermath?
It's a very uncertain time. I mean, what's happening in Haiti right now is the result of huge frustration with an ongoing political scandal. It was sparked by revelations last year that the Haitian government has misappropriated $1.8 billion in a Venezuelan-backed Petrocaribe fund. The way that fund operated was that it allowed Haiti to have low-interest fuel, low-cost fuel, and that the revenue that the Haitian government was to make from that was to be invested in national development. Instead of investing it in development, $1.8 billion has been stolen. So understandably, there is huge frustration at that. And I think that this moment has also tapped into broader political frustration. What we're seeing is the Haitian people en masse saying that they have had enough with this system of government corruption, government impunity, by which there is never accountability for the powerful when they abuse the rights of the poor majority. So far, peace protests have been very peaceful. There has been a crackdown by the police and the government attempting to really crack down on civil society, and that is very concerning. And I think it's really anyone's guess where this goes to next.
Right. And so, Ives, in everything President Moise has done in response to the protests and the questions and the investigations looking into corruption and looking into whether that money was stolen, with everything they've done, has it become clear to the protesters and others that, yes, this money has been siphoned off and has been stolen?
Yes, I think it's been clear from the beginning. The people have become quite well acquainted with the corruption of the PHTK, the Haitian Bald-Headed Party of President Moise and his predecessor, Michel Martelly. Corruption was really their hallmark. In fact, Jovenel Moise came into power under indictment for money laundering. The State Corruption Unit, UCREF, issued a report showing about $7 million was clearly being laundered by his agribusiness firm, Agritrans. He decapitated that agency the minute he got into power. It took him 2 tries to do so. And he's since gone forward. And now the genie is out of the bottle since July, when the government tried to hike gas prices by 50% in the case of kerosene, at least. And I don't think that they're going to be able to get a hold of this, they get it back in the bottle, because the people are just incensed.
Yeah, and so, Sienna, the protests erupt. He keeps quiet for a while, and then he comes out, and he's hardly very conciliatory. He says things like, democracy requires sacrifice, democracy requires the respect of rules, just like the Constitution orders. That can't be going down well with the people.
Yeah, I think what's been very concerning to see is that, again, this is a crisis that has been sparked by impunity, by failures of accountability, by lack of responsiveness to the needs of the Haitian people, and that in response to the very legitimate frustrations of the people and the peaceful protests that have been occurring in Port-au-Prince, rather than attempting to be genuinely responsive, Jovenel Moise is retreating into defensiveness and doing everything he can to reinforce his impunity, his lack of accountability. So we saw that in his statement. I think very concerningly, we've also seen attempts by the presidential palace to politicize the national police force. Last week, there were reports of a new police unit circulating in Port-au-Prince that was wearing a different uniform, carrying automatic weapons, and reporting directly to the presidential palace. That was disavowed by the Haitian National Police as not within their command, and there was a lot of backlash against that. But what we see is the president trying to create clearly his own power force and clearly indicating that he's going to try and stay in power no matter what, and doing that in a way that isn't based on real dialogue, real responsiveness, but just a further retreat into impunity.
Yeah, and Kim, so his colleague, the Prime Minister, comes along and says, I have a tangible solution as well. I've got this little program to create jobs. Is that going to make any difference whatsoever? Is that going to placate people at all?
I don't think so. Jean-Henri Séan, his new prime minister, is seen by the population as an opportunist, as somebody who is ready to work with that sector, the PHTK sector. I think, he's making a lot of gestures towards not just placating the people, but backing up the Petrocaribe investigation and bringing things to a trial. But I don't think it's going to be enough to essentially stop the protests.
Mm-hmm. And Sienna, the opposition spearheaded this investigation in the Senate into the corruption, and they've sensed opportunity. They've been very vocal, as far as I understand, at these protests. But has their track record been any better than the ruling party when it comes to corruption?
Well, this first investigation by the Haitian Senate that sparked this over a year ago was spearheaded by former Senate President Yuri Latortu, who the US government in leaked WikiLeaks cables has described as the poster boy of corruption. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that anyone really thinks that these motives are anything more than politically motivated, an attempt for a power grab. But I think that what's happened since is what we've seen is the emergence of a genuinely popular movement that is bringing together a range of people from across the Haitian political spectrum and across all walks of social life, from young people in the middle class to people in really poor neighbourhoods of Haiti, and that there is not a clear leader of this movement. There are certainly people who are attempting to claim leadership, and there are many very vocal people, and of course there is leadership behind the scenes, no doubt, but this is a movement genuinely of the people that is calling not only for accountability for this Petrocaribe scandal, but for a change in how Haitian politics is done, and for real accountability to the people, and a new kind of political order in Haiti. And I think that's what's very inspiring to see about this movement that's happening on the streets right now.
Kim, do you echo that?
I do. I think it's very similar to what we saw 32 years ago in 1986 with the uprisings against Jean-Claude Duvalier, who was the dictator of a 30-year-old dictatorship of himself and his father. And like today, the impetus of the movement really began in November. He may survive through Christmas. Usually there's a lull in December, but January and February are likely to be very turbulent. And I don't think that, this is something, the momentum is too great. And as Sienna mentioned, the opposition is too broad. You have everybody from sort of the enlightened bourgeoisie to the radical left, which are engaged in this front against the government. So I don't see them surviving.
Sienna, if Jovenel Moïse called you up and said, "Come to Port-au-Prince, sit down with me, and explain to me how I can turn this around. I take your advice. Help me. How do I do this? How do I turn this around?" What would you tell him?
Well, I mean, I think I'd probably first tell him that he should be speaking to his own people rather than foreigners sitting in the United States. But beyond that, I think that there are very clear demands that have come out of the opposition, and that includes for a fully transparent audit as opposed to the half audits that have been done and been acted on in the past, and for the arrest of the people who have been clearly implicated in this corruption and restitution of the funds that were stolen. And as Kim mentioned, there have been symbolic gestures at investigations so far, but there really haven't been any real substantive effects at accountability. I mean, I think the reality here is this government cannot really respond because it is deeply implicated. Both personally, Jovenel Moïse has been implicated, but also it won election on the basis of political patronage, not because it had broad-based support of the population. Jovenel Moïse won with 10% of the national population's vote due to voter suppression and extremely low turnout. And the way it remains in power is political patronage from the rich and powerful in Haiti, and that enables and in many ways necessitates corruption. So I'm not sure how this government is going to be able to respond without really cleaning house and accepting the consequences of the deeply entrenched corruption. But the way it should try and do that is to talk to the people who are opposing it and who are making very clear and very legitimate demands of their government.
Right. Now, Kim, in order to clean up corruption, does Haiti need a change of government, or does it need a change of the entire political culture at play right now?
Yeah, I think it's a systemic change Haiti needs. I mean, one of the big factors we have to look at is Haiti is still under United Nations military occupation. There's a UN force in there named MINIJUST, the UN mission for justice, supposedly. And this is a Chapter 7 mission under the United Nations, which they may seek to send in more troops at some point. There's about 1,300 policemen there now, but soldiers were there until 2 years ago. And so I think the situation is very fluid. The people, it's an unstoppable force. How immovable the object they go up against is still the question.
And Sienna, when it comes to helping Haiti, in the sense that, I mean, it's not a country that needs handouts per se, but after the earthquake, there was a huge outpouring of goodwill from all over the world. And I know that Venezuela has its own problems. So when we look at the Petro-Caribe issue, perhaps it's a bit of an outlier. But given the corruption and given the fact that a lot of aid money has been squandered and stolen, is this going to make other nations think twice about getting involved with Haiti or even helping when it needs help?
Well, what's really unfortunate, and what we saw in the reconstruction response, is that the way that international aid has occurred in Haiti is often that it not only bypasses the government, and of course, as you mentioned, there are reasons that are very genuine related to corruption around that, although it does create a vicious cycle, but it bypasses local organizations. If we see what happened post-2010 earthquake, is that the vast amount of that money was either not delivered after it was pledged, or it was delivered through USAID contractors and large international NGOs, and a huge amount of money was absorbed by a kind of professional class of the aid industry, rather than going through long-lasting small grassroots groups that actually understand the context and have knowledge about how to do this reconstruction. And so I think, unfortunately, the fact that there has not been more reconstruction after the earthquake has led to what, will be called in New York kind of donor circles Haiti fatigue. But that's extremely unfair, because the way that aid was done was setting itself up for failure. And I think what we see as well is a total lack of accountability from the international community, broadly speaking, whether that's the United Nations or the aid community, about actually how they do their work and how they hold themselves accountable when they have very real damages on the people they're claiming to serve.
Okay, well, it's been really good dipping into this topic. We haven't covered Haiti in a while. I look forward to talking Haiti again with the two of you in the not too distant future. Sienna Merope-Synge and Ives, I thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmakers.